Hi everybody. Today I'll be going over my process of digitizing and coloring this Dungeons and Dragons piece I did. It's of a Druid and his fire wolf familiar. So you'll see first off I scanned the image and then I brought it into Photoshop. The scan was done at 600 dpi, but 300 dpi should also be fine. And then I made a new layer. Then I went to image, adjustments, threshold. And then I played around with the slider until I found a setting that had enough detail in it but didn't destroy all the lines. It's around 200. Press OK, and then I just zoomed in to see if everything looked fine. Alright, so then to separate the blacks and the whites, I went to select color range and I selected the whites, and then I deleted it with the backspace key, and then I deselected the image with Command D. Then I zoomed in again just to check everything. It's always important to name your layers, don't forget about that. And then I decided to work on a gray background to help me with my color values. Then I'll create a folder, name it color, and I'll start adding all my layers in there. But first I want to create a mask. I'm going to select the outside of the Lineart with the magic wand key or W. Then I'll go to select, modify, expand, and I'll expand the selection. I'll then go to select inverse. With that selection, I'll click on the layer group and then I'll click on the mask icon. You'll see in black and white next to the folder it's the mask, but the mask is a bit wrong because the selection, there were a bunch of open spaces in the line art. When I create the layer in the color folder, you'll see when I fill it, it doesn't fill the whole image. So that means the mask is wrong. I'll select the mask and I'll choose the white color to add to the mask with a solid round brush. So now you'll see wherever I paint, the color from the layer underneath shows through. So I'll just go through the image and make sure everything is included in the mask that I want. And then I'll swap to black to remove from the mask. Alright, once the mask is done, I'll start adding new layers for the different types of materials. That's the way I like to do it, so that I can adjust the colors later on. So I'll do one first that I call leather, do some for the leaf, for the pauldrons, and then I'll go through the entire image, adding new layers and just naming them according to the group or the material that they will be associated with, and then I'll fill in a different color. I'll speed up some of these sections just so that you can watch me draw and not listen to my voice all the time. All of these are still in the color folder, so they will all be masked within the selection that the mask was made with. So I worked a bit backwards here. For the wolf, I wanted to do a different mask. I created a new folder and I called it wolf. And I added a red fill layer in that folder. But this entire folder is still inside the color folder. So it's still masked. But now it's just about the layer sequencing. So you'll see that I wanted to have a solid color for the wolf that I could use as a layer to clip over for a clipping mask. That's the red that you can see. And then you'll see I created a new layer and I made a clipping mask from it. Then I decided to do some line art coloring, so I went to the top layer, the lines layer, and I clicked on the little checkered pattern there to lock the alpha, and then I just went on top of the existing layer with some new colors and colored the line art. And I went back to the wolf and just added some more colors. And then I did the same, I added a new folder for the log. This folder was also still inside the group with the layer mask on it. Alright, and then I decided to add some shadows on the multiply layer. Just some purple, light purple shadowing. And then I went through the image. I tried to stay zoomed out during this phase just to prevent any unnecessary details. And then I also did the same for the highlights. Except instead of making it a multiply layer, I just made it a normal layer. And I chose a very similar skin tone color or a slightly brighter color than the base flat color. For the bounce light, or from the wolf, I also added another layer, and I used a little bit less bright orange for the bounce light. Lastly, for some effects, I did a soft brush on a lower opacity, and then I added some colors over the top of the line layer. Lastly, I'll add a completely black layer, and then I'll change it to color dodge, and then I'll use a big soft brush with a very low opacity on white to boost some of the colors or some of the glow effects. And then the last thing I did, I selected the entire image, then I went to copy merged, and I copied this into a new document, and then I started playing with the adjustments. So I went to image adjustments, curves, and I darkened the image a little bit, brightened the highlights and darkened the shadows, and then I played with the hue and saturation also a little bit, and then I also did some color balancing, just to add some extra flair to the colors. Alright, when that's done, I'll add a film grain filter over just to add some texture. Very low setting, because it brightens up the whole image if you go too far. And then I export it. So that's it for this short little tutorial video. If you want me to go into more detail or a slower process, I can definitely do that. I do live stream of these character designs on my Twitch, where I start off on a blank canvas and we go through the whole posing and design phase. Alright, thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you next time.